But if it's, you know, like, this is a skate video where a guy drinks a Mountain Dew and falls, like we know we're not idiots. Like we're the internet. We're smart.
But do you feel like I mean I feel like there's an obvious link between that ad campaign and like power thirst, right? AIDS advertising. Like how do you feel about that lineage not or being?
I mean, you know, I can't say like the guys that created it, you know, if they reference that or not. I mean, I know that it's owes a lot to Tim and Eric who directed the spot. So I mean, I can't kind of answer that
stuff all the time anyway, right?
But I mean, it's just a sense of humor, you know. I think it's more of a stylistic choice than anything, and that's sort of like the sense of humor that's big on the internet right now.
So one of the things that one of the reasons why we created Know Your Meme was we were seeing lots of things being versions of memes being put into the mainstream, right? Being used as basis for TV shows, for commercials, for all these other things, and you know people would come across and think, "Oh my God, that is the greatest fucking thing ever! They are a fucking genius," and they had no idea that this stuff was sourced from the internet. So we wanted to start being able to say, at least, like, even if it's not, oh, we know that the exact person who started, who all of a sudden popularized fail, we at least want to be able to say, you know, we found an instance on this board at this time, and you know, and from here moved to there, or moved on to these other places. Right. Because that stuff was missing. But I mean, Wikipedia doesn't care about memes for the most part. I mean, unless it gets coverage on I love you, Brad, but unless Keyboard Cat gets coverage on CNN, they're not going to care. They're not going to give a shit about our culture.
Okay, so I got a question for you. It's inevitable that advertising and popular culture is going to take ideas from internet culture and purpose it for their own sake, right? What responsibility do they have to contribute back into the society, right, to our world? Or do they have any whatsoever? Or is the law just written a certain way that they can fuck us and that's the end of it?
Right. I mean, you've seen some... Sorry, do you want to hop in on that? Well, I mean, you've seen some emergent effects, right? So it's often argued that, like, you know, constant innovation, for example, always comes in the form of more and more extreme content, right? Like, so like Two Girls, One Cup outpaces Goatsy by a far stretch. And like, there's this kind of like immune system where it's just like
wrongfully so.
Yeah.
I don't know if that. Yeah.
Has everyone seen it?
We're just gonna put it up.
Can we call that up? Please?
Yeah. As you guys leave, it'll be a nice memento from ROFLCon.
Tonight's dinner will be lasagna.
And so, but do you think that's actually like a dynamic that's at work, right? Where, you know, basically it's like we're going to just get more and more extreme, and it's going to sort of protect itself against appropriation.
I'd be interested in hearing Moot's thoughts on that, since 4chan is extreme.
Well, the beatards, you know, they love posting shock imagery, and like anytime when we were linked on, we were the featured article on Wikipedia about a year and a half ago, and you know, and so they're
everyone
partially
just finished
like,
that story.
Partially they're like, oh, damn it, but the other they're like, yes, you know, they're kind of like, hell yeah. And it was like, you know, gore thread night. You know, welcome Wikipedians. Here, click this thread. It's funny that, I mean, 4chan has gotten more extreme based on kind of where we started. It was this anime nerd site. It still kind of is, but the content used to be very tame, and it became more porny and more extreme. But I don't think 4chan has gotten more extreme over the years. It's kind of plateaued as far as extreme. I mean, I guess when you kind of hit the ceiling, it's just there's nowhere further to go. I mean, they push limits, but I mean there still is a hard limit there.
Whenever folks who aren't sort of from like civilians kind of ask about 4chan,
Civilians.
I always say that like you know, I know you love low cats, so if I can go to I Can Eat Cheeseburger, don't ever go to 4chan. 4chan, just because you love tasty meat doesn't mean you need to go to the fucking butcher shop, right? And but one of the things that I love about, or one of the things I think is interesting about it is I feel like that extremism, or whatever you want to call it, like acts almost as a filter, almost like a gatekeeper. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like in a good way of keeping out the people who you don't necessarily want to have in there, right? Because of everything else you have, because of everything you say about for all the things that are great about anonymity, right? Especially when you're young, you want to be able to explore ideas. You want to be able to like put shit up there and not have to worry about like what people are going to think of you, because you just want to get that idea out there. By being able to like put it behind this wall of extreme, whatever you want to call it, like.
Yeah, well, we kind of pride ourselves in having no barriers. I mean, 4chan is there's no registration, technically there's nothing in between you and visiting the site and contributing, but there is a very real barrier as far as the content and the culture and the language is concerned. You know, people who don't know the internet don't get 4chan. They get there and they see, you know, similar to chat roulette, lots of penises, and you know, they see gore, they see extreme content, they see you know, racist, misogynist. They see all sorts of content that turns them off to the site, and you have to be able to stomach that to, at least on B. I mean, it is important to remember that there are 48 or so topics on 4chan. The origami board is pretty tame, you know. I heard it's the Pokemon board now.
That's a challenge, I think.
Yeah, but the random board does have that kind of filter as far as like, do you understand it, number one, and can you get past all of the quote unquote extreme content and stick there? But even
that, like, it's all like collective group think. Like there is no rules, and then like one day it's like, oh, you know, gore thread, or like, you know, child porn, like. It's, you know, we are. I've heard. You know, it's.
What
like,
was that time till CP? Was that 10 minutes?
Oh my!
It's the moot law.
So, but I mean, like that's the most interesting thing about all of this is like, you know, 4chan didn't have any rules, and it just sort of like collectively decided like, oh, this is the most awful thing, but it's also like the funniest thing, and here's a funny comic. Whereas, you know, Tumblr has the same, vaguely the same barriers. I mean, you do have to register for it, but like, you don't see a lot of dicks on Tumblr.
Well,
I mean,
sure?
it's harder to find.
At least the one.
Depending on which
I don't know who you guys are
Challenge.
following.
I mean, where there's no, like, as far as I know, like, dick feed on Tumblr. I mean, the thing about 4chan is that we're, like, and part of, like, the magic of it is that we cram, at any given time, we put, like, a Chartbeat tag on the site recently, and so there are 10,000 eyeballs on the index page of the random board at any given time. And so we're funneling, you know, there are about 50 to 60,000 people using the site, 10,000 are on this one single page. So we're funneling people into this one space, and if you do post, you know, something obscene, 10,000 people have seen it in a second. And so sites like Tumblr, I mean, there's not really like the waterfall. There's not like really the soup that you look at. 4chan is more that way in that you've got one feed. There's only really one way to browse it. And so, you know, on the off chance there is obscene content or, you know, rule or law infringing content, you see it because we can't get it down immediately.
I have one more question. A lot of you guys have said we, us, the group think. What do you think, are there any core traits to internet culture? Like, what makes us us? And at what point do we sort of blend into normal culture? When does internet culture blend into normal culture?
When we go make a living, for the most part, right? When you go to work, there's that barrier that says not safe for work. You can't go visit these things or do these things. But it's not because it's gore, or it's because it's something that is completely vulgar. But we feel somewhat socially abnormal in our identity, right? That we feel like we're not part of the mainstream, and that, hence the friction you kind of see here today. Is that we identify with being part of a subculture, right?
You go. No, you go.
So it's kind of one thing that we kind of pride ourselves in Know Your Meme is remembering things that came before us. Like Jason Scott, text files is like one of these. I've been reading text files since I was a kid, you know, and it's because we remember that stuff that makes us internet people, and that's what they say hipsterism kind of you can define it as is acquiring a piece of culture without knowing the history behind it. Like you wear punk because you like how it looks, not because you have ever listened to Black Flag, you know.
I think like one of the key things that sets apart like the people in this room is like the desire to go and find content.